30-minute reviews, beware of spoilers, and exploring hyperspace lanes are all available ad-free. But if you want to support the show, you can go to bewareofspoilers.com and click the support button that's available on the Spotify website. Thank you. Good evening, and welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. On this Thursday evening. Wow, it's been a while since we did a Thursday night movie. Yeah, well, last week I was busy. During football season, Thursday night is a little iffy for me, but here we are. Now, I went into Argylle with very low expectations because I had seen the trailer more times than I've seen anything over the last 6 months. And it's the kind of thing where I was going into this expecting to see the trailer for Dune Part 2 on a Dolby screen and be like, all right, well, at least I spent the 2.5 hours here, but I got to see the Dune trailer, so it's worth it. I was surprised that I liked this movie as much as I did. Now, look, I'm not saying the movie's good. Like, it's one of those things where, like, there's a difference between liking something and finding enjoyment in something and saying it's good. Like, I find enjoyment in, what's the example I always use? Revenge of the Sith, I think, is the example I always use. I will sit down and I will watch Revenge of the Sith. If it's on TV and I have nothing else to watch, and it's playing on TNT or TBS or whatever, I will put on Revenge of the Sith, no matter where it is in that movie, and I will turn it on, and I will find some enjoyment in that movie the entire way. For the most part, I found some enjoyment most of the way through this movie. It's a little overlong, plot's a little overcomplex, and if you sit there and think about it too long, it makes zero sense. As long as you don't think about the movie you're watching, this is a great shut-off-your-brain movie. Because it's like, well, like, why couldn't she have just, like, by the time you get to the end and you got Catherine O'Hara doing this thing and spoilers for anyone out there. I mean, the title is Beware of Spoilers, and if you're listening to this, I assume you want Argylle somewhat spoiled for you, but, like, one of the things that really got me was when they, got me as in, like, whoa, I was not expecting that, was the reveal that her parents weren't really her parents. That was something I was not expecting. Like, for it to be, like, the 1-2 punch of the reveal that Bryan Cranston's her father, and then the reveal, like, oh, no, he's not really her father. She just thinks he's her father. Like, that whole thing is just so well handled in that part of the movie. And it is kind of entertaining. There's enough entertaining parts. The action sequences, some of them go on a little too long, and it wasn't until about halfway through the movie that I was like, oh, this movie's not rated R. This is PG-13. It's a little that's a little weird. I don't think this is as bad as The King's Man. I don't think this is, like, I did not like The King's Man at all. Having seen it again. I think I was a little bit higher on it when I first saw it, but since then I've been a little bit like, I don't know. But either way, it's like I'm watching this movie and I'm enjoying, the entertaining parts of it. Like, Sam Rockwell is a treasure. As a human being, he's a treasure. And it doesn't matter what he is, who he's playing, or in what movie, he's always fun to watch. And he's Sam Rockwell being Sam Rockwell, and he does that so fantastically that it's like, all right, I will ride with these characters and have fun with it. And again, the plot's a little too complex. Like, okay, this woman who was going after the bullet that had the secret file in it, like, they decided to do a psyop while she's in a coma. Okay, sure, I guess. Like, there's a lot of questionable decisions that, like, I'm just like, I don't know if we need all of this. And then, like, we get through the movie, and, as we don't know how much she knows, like, the audience is kind of kept in the dark, too, but it's not really executed in the best way. the ice skating fight at the end is probably the part of the movie where I was like, all right, let's just get this over with. Especially considering, like, again, not someone who's like, you gotta show blood and gore. And I think this is a similar conversation we had when we talked about Uncharted, where it's like, you can't say we're gonna do a knife fight in a PG-13 movie because the stabbing doesn't work. It doesn't translate. Like, if you can't show blood. Like, that's the big thing, is that it's like, you can't have a movie be this over-violent and not have the gore to go with it, I think. But it is one of those things where it's like, I don't know what the alternative is. I'm not entirely sure why the movie couldn't have been rated R. I think it's too, as I'm watching, I'm like, alright, this is a little ridiculous. Some of the effects are terrible. But there's enough things to enjoy. And I think that the first, 10 minutes kind of soured me a little bit. But I guess, the ending kind of threw me for a loop, and not in a good way, and I think it's part of the problem, where it's like, okay, so it ends with this guy who looks just like Argylle showing up in showing up at the book signing. And by the way, that was something else that, it's a small thing, it's a nitpicky thing, but the fourth book is the one she's releasing in the beginning. She's working on the fifth book. The fourth book ends with capturing and finding out that the organization that they work for, the directorate, is actually the bad guys. And that's the big reveal at the end of the fourth book. So, this idea that, oh, okay, so that's all kind of happening. That's something that is, kind of big to end the fourth book on. Why is she doing the reading at the launch party, reading the last chapter of the book to the people who showed up? Why is that the chapter you're choosing? I'm sorry, but if I'm going to the author's big launch party for her book, I'm like, oh, cool. So now I have no reason to really read this because I know how it ends. It's one of the things where it's like, why would you read the ending of the book? Why would that be where you? Whatever, it is what it is. But when she goes to at the end of the movie, it's the launch party for the last book. And she's reading out, again, the last chapter of the last book. And I'm like, again, you're reading the last chapter, what the fuck are you doing? And this guy stands up, it's Henry Cavill, and she's like, and he says, you probably, I don't have a question for you, but you probably have some questions for me. And you're like, oh, alright, that's a nice little comedic beat to go out on. Alright, cool. So then we get to the post-credit scene, which I think is meant to imply that this is in the same universe as the Kingsman movies, and I'm just like, okay, which makes the decision to make this PG-13 all the more baffling, because I'm like, why? Those movies are rated hard R. Why was this one PG-13? And the moment that made me realize is that we got one fuck in the movie, and I'm like, oh shit, okay, we only got the one, that's weird. This guy is right up my ass, and he got a giant-ass truck with these giant, helicopter lights. What the fuck is he doing? But either way. So, I mean, there's enough to be fun to be had with this movie that makes it worth watching. And one of the things early on I was thinking was, had this movie come out on Apple TV Plus and had it been a streaming exclusive movie, I feel like I would have been higher on it than I am seeing it as a theatrical movie. And that feels weird, because I've always been one for, I want parity between the quality of movie that I'm watching on streaming versus watching in a theater. But then you see things like Heart of Stone, you see things like The Gray Man, you see things like, the fuck was that other one with wasn't that also Ryan Reynolds? I forgot what the fuck it was called. Ghosted with Chris Evans and Ana de Armas. It's one of those things where it's you go into these with such low expectations that I think had it getting a theatrical release, inherent and a wide theatrical release, is designed to inspire confidence in the movie. I'm watching this and I'm like, oh, this is going to be, good. This is going to be very high quality, this movie, because they're putting the money in to give it a wide theatrical release. A streaming thing, I tend to think the other way. And be like, okay, they're dumping it out on streaming, it's probably not going to be as good, we'll watch it on streaming eventually, and we'll get to it. and we'll talk about it. The issue and with this, I was like, had this just come out on Apple TV Plus and I watched it, I'd be like, bravo, this is one of the better streaming movies that we've seen since the streaming wars have really taken off in the way they have. Like, good for them, they nailed it. But I think that, like, for a theatrical movie, especially if you're watching it in a premium screen like I am, like, well, not I am, like I saw this on a Dolby screen, like, in that case, this is not a movie that is really designed to be, like, it doesn't feel like it was designed to be viewed on the highest quality screen possible, because a lot of the effects being bad are highlighted by how big the screen is and how high the quality is of the picture otherwise. So, like, the opening sequence when they're chasing through Greece, there are points there where it's like, oh, that's clearly not Henry Cavill, that's clearly CGI. And look, I get it, you're not going to put Henry Cavill in actual jeopardy when you can use CGI. I totally get why you would do that. And then there's also the added thing of stunt people are union, VFX people aren't, so you use the VFX people because you can pay them less to do the same, to get the same effect. I get it. I understand the math, I understand the logic. I disagree with the logic, but I understand what the logic is. You can still make it look good, and I think that if I was watching this on my TV or on my phone and I was streaming it and it didn't look as good, because there's an inherent loss of quality when you watch something on streaming, and it's just because, you know, when you're streaming video, you're going to have some loss from the, you know, from the internet. Like, the internet's gonna, you know, not be perfect. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, so we have all of these things kind of happening. So, is it clearly that this movie was designed for streaming? Kinda, yeah. So, we're gonna take that into consideration for our rating, because I think that had this movie gotten exclusively a wider theatrical release, and it wasn't like, okay, we're going to dump it out on Apple TV Plus in a few months after anyway, and that's how we think most people are going to watch it, it kind of falls into a weird place of, like, could the effects have been better? Yeah. Would they look better on your TV screen? Probably. So, I think this is a solid wait for streaming movie, but I think this falls into the category of wait for streaming, but I think it's worth, if you don't have Apple TV Plus, getting Apple TV Plus and watching this. Or if you're going to do what some people do and wait for a bunch of stuff to pile up and then watch it all at once when you have your 1 month that you're going to pay for, this is something that I would very highly recommend you watch on Apple TV. Because, like, if you're going to wait until, like, Napoleon's out and you already have Killers of the Flower Moon and you have that month and Tetris is out, like, throw this on too. Like, this is definitely worth it. I don't know if I would say go out and see it in a, you know, in a movie theater. And again, I feel weird in the situation because I'm privileged to live in an area that has a 17-screen theater. So we get the smaller releases. We get all of the other stuff. And Argylle is the major release this week. So, like, I guess if you want to go to a movie, it's not the worst movie you can see. I have seen worse movies in the theater in the last 6 months. I've seen worse movies on streaming in the last 6 months. And I found enough to enjoy this movie where it's like, you know what? Like, there are enough funny moments in here where I look back on the time that I spent watching the movie where I'm not like, that was a complete waste of my time. And I've had that happen where I've walked out of a movie being like, this is a complete waste of time. Why are we, you know, why did this, you know, get handled the way it did? But to that end, I would say this is a solid 3-star movie. 3 to 4 star movie. And I think that Matthew Vaughn is a little held back by the, what's it called? Oh, cool. And you're right in front of me. Matthew Vaughn is definitely held back by the PG-13 rating. He definitely could have, you know, done more to, if he had the full R. And I feel like that would have helped the movie a little bit. But, like, goddamn, there's one sequence toward the end where I'm just like, it goes on way too long. It's the whole ice skating fight. And the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm like, number one, if the goal here is to fight without doing something that will generate sparks, then I don't think that, you know, like, ice skating on knives across oil is the way to do it, number one. Number two, I don't think that that's how friction works. I don't think if you put knives on your shoes like that, you can just skate on oil. I'm fairly certain that that's not how that works. But regardless, you know, it is what it is. It just goes on way too long. And it was at that point that I'm like, this is just too much. This is just too much. And then the final thing with the code, like, and that was the thing too that bothered me too, was the code, like the Winter Soldier code that she had to turn her into a sleeper agent. It's like, why did you do that then and not earlier in the movie? Like, why did you wait until the last possible second to do that when you had other options earlier? Like, it's just kind of silly to me. But yeah, we'll wrap up there for today. I think tomorrow morning we're going to do Masters of the Universe, Revolution, and we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about, I think we have another movie tomorrow evening, but I got to look at my schedule. And either way, we'll announce it tomorrow morning if there is. If not, we will see. What else have we got? In the near future, we have Madam Web, and we have Bob Marley, Bob Marley, One Love. There's another movie in the near future, too, coming out. What the fuck was it? I don't remember. But yeah, so we got all of that coming up. And until our next episode, this guy in front of me in the fucking sports car is the exact reason why we need to have speed limiters. Until then, have a great rest of your week.